have contact with on a regular basis. So we had Tony Collier and George Teasdale as a three. They often made up as a three, but not exclusively. And then we had other folk. Going back, you could go back to all sorts of characters that I remember who used to come to the house more than once or twice, and they're too numerous to mention. But one of the people who was quite influential was somebody called Jack Savage.
Yes, his name has come up before.
Yeah, Jack Savage was a lovely man. He was a lay preacher, and he was a keen musician. He used to play the organ, probably in churches and such like. Philosophic and learned, very learned, and he had an old Morris Traveller. If you don't know what that is, it's imagine a 1940s, 50s car, but it was the back end of it was sort of an estate with wooden slats that made it a very unusual car. But anyway, it's a Morris Traveller, and he would often take my dad out. Now that would be something that was quite special to my dad because he never had a car. He could jump on the bus and go to Newcastle or whatever, and he was certainly a good walker, so he'd walk the area quite readily. But in terms of getting to places out of the way, maybe Whitby or something of that nature, or up in Northumberland, or up in the west side of Durham or something like that, he would take him out, and so there was many trips away with Jack Savage, and he was a good friend, a very, very good friend. Jack Savage's daughter is now well known. She was the one that devised the Teletubbies. A claim to fame. So yeah. So there was Jack Savage. Another person who was quite friendly with was a gentleman called Duncan Nicholson, who was a local baker. He had a baker's shop just above the town hall, the high street. And Duncan was an loud eccentric guy, very volatile guy, but once again intellectual, and they would stimulate conversation from each other. So Duncan Nicholson and his wife and Norman and Sarah would go out on the odd trip out. Other people I'm thinking of would be let me see, Ted Harrison, who I'm sure you know of. So Ted and my dad met in the 1950s, mid 1950s, at Wallington Hall on some sort of art course. I don't know why my dad would have been there as a student, but I think maybe they'd just gone along. He'd gone along to Wallington Hall in Northumberland. It's a lovely sort of country estate, and met Ted Harrison. They were both painting or drawing the castle, and then just sort of hit it off, and ended up wandering off somewhere and did their own thing. And after that, they struck up a real friendship, and he was a good friend of my dad. I think Ted Harrison had often said that Norman had influenced his art quite strongly. I think Ted Harrison was the one that actually took my dad down to London and bought him the very first Flowmaster pen. And of course, then he went off to Canada and became known as an artist of the Yukon, and the rest is history. But they used to communicate with it, but the blue airmail letters used to come in quite regularly. Who else?
Reverend Gladhill was a friend.
Yeah, Reverend. I can't really recall much about him. There are others. Who else now? Made a little list.
Sid Chaplin was very
Sid,
important.
yeah, I'll get to Sid Chaplin.
Sid Chaplin's mentioned in that article I gave you with Tony Blair.
Yeah.
To mention. They were very good friends from obviously back in the pitch, but also from the settlement.
Yeah, I spoke to Michael Chaplin
No,
a few weeks ago, and yeah, he was telling me about visiting when he was a child. Visiting you.
I'm sure he told you about the
Who's
time he
this, sorry?
broke the window.
With
Michael Chaplin.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sure he told you about the time he broke the window.
He did.
He
in
mentioned
fact,
that
tell
in
me.
the
Eulogy.
in the eulogy
In the
at the funeral.
Yeah. It was a lovely eulogy. Once again, I've got a copy if you need it. But he was obviously a wordsmith. He's like his father Sid, and so he was very good at the eulogy. But that was his abiding memory. The fact that my dad didn't rant and rave about the broken glass. He just calmed him down and said, "It's all right, son, not a problem." And he just dealt with it. And I think Michael was always very glad of that he didn't get scolded by his parents and cuffed around the ear all. So Sid, his father, Sid Chaplin, you'll know about Sid. You know his story, but they both thought, I suppose, they're both the most well known of the people who went to the Spennymoor settlement. Sid is a writer and Dad is an artist, and not only that, but they both worked at Dean and Chapter. My dad was a hewer and a putter, so if you like a bog standard miner, whereas Sid was more into servicing above ground and bits and bobs. He serviced the equipment, so they weren't close workmates in that respect, but worked at the same place. And then they just hit it off, and they became lifelong friends.
Kindred spirits.
Yeah.
And again, I think they probably were able to have that sort of conversation that we spoke about earlier on a higher plane, because they both, were intellectuals.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously they were. Sid would promote my father because obviously his books were illustrated by my dad's pictures, and when Sid was a newspaper columnist, he would write obviously all sorts of different things, but occasionally about my father. I think he wrote a very nice piece in the Guardian when he was down in London, extolling the virtues of Norman Cornish, the artist. So they weren't always in communication, because Sid spent some time in Ferry Hill and the local area when they were young men, and they were firm friends there, and the families met. Sid and his wife Renee, and Norman and Sarah would meet up occasionally, although neither families had cars. They would meet in Newcastle, Jesmond area, and occasionally they would visit us and such like, and but they weren't sort of living in each other's doorsteps, because Sid spent some time down in London as a newspaper journalist, and then when he came back, he was in Jesmond. So I think they probably spent more time together had they not been separated by distance. So some of the others, I would say Bob Heslop was both the Heslops actually. They were founder members, or they were members of the settlement, and Bob was the artist, who and he has a reputation. He's a well-known artist, and his brother was, I think, John Heslop, who was a philosopher. Both miners again, both very deep thinkers, both very creative and skillful people. I think you may notice on the Shapes of Cornish film, my dad is sat talking to a gentleman in the pub, and they just break into song. I don't remember that moment, but that's John Heslop. They both talked about opera and the arts. Go to see Gigli the most famous opera singer of the time, and all sorts of things like that. So they were good friends, the Heslops. I think that's what I want to think of the significant friends.
Now, Bob Heslop, he was a well-known painter, and he was quite influential to Cornish.
I don't know who influenced who. I mean, obviously they were both contemporaries at a time when neither of them were well known. I think obviously my dad became more well known, but at the time, obviously they were both working, painting together, a bit of curatorial work, putting exhibitions together. So they were influential to each other in that respect. But how much they influence each other's work and their styles, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Of course, Bob and Gillian, the autobiographers, became friends of Norman. Mary and Gunny were Mary Robson and her partner Gunny. She was a lecturer at Durham University, and they were people we saw regularly. We even went across as a family to visit them and spent some time over in the Lake District, in a place that was called Branthwaite, something like that, over the Lake District. And they often came to visit us, and they were lovely people who we knew for many years. So the list goes on.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an exclusive list.
Yes.
But the key ones are the ones.
So, do you want to give me those names, the last two again?
It was Mary Robson.
Mary Robson.
She was a lecturer in I don't know, it was art, or I don't even think it was that. I don't even know where they came across each other. Although I think my dad did spend a little bit of time at Durham Technical College or something at the time. So they may have met there. And Gunny was her partner. I don't know if it's a surname.
Oh, I do. You know what? The Gunny name, that I've seen letters
Yeah.
between them.
Yeah.
A number of
Yeah.
letters. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe I found a recipe for whiskey butter or something. Yes.
As you do.
As you do.
So that's basically it, really.
Yeah, that's good.
I only have a
That's
limited memory.
Yeah.
I think probably Anne and Mike will remember different characters or characters in a different way.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely would like to get in touch with George Teasdale. I will try to do that.
Right. Okay. So could you switch that off for a second? So what are the things would you like to talk through?
What time is it now?
It
Would you like a
is
cup of tea or coffee or?
Actually, just a glass of water would be very
That's
nice.
Would
Yeah.
you like a nice piece of cake?
I won't say
Does anybody
cake.
not want a nice piece of cake? 2:25 Are you training back or? Did you get the train over or?
It's 2:25 already. Wow. Yeah, I got the train down. I'll either take the train or I'll jump on a bus.
Okay.
Whatever is most convenient.
The
Okay.
bus is right down the bottom.
Okay.
It's
Great. Yeah,
literally the bottom of our
I'll
drive.
just do that.
Take a left and you're there within 20 yards.
Okay.
X21 or no, the 21. If you go
Oh, yeah,
down,
yeah, the 21.
if
yeah.
you go down our drive to the main road, take
Yeah.
a left. There's a bus stop.
Yeah.
That takes the 21 every 8 minutes or something.
Yeah.
You walk down to the next bus stop, 250 yards. That's the X21 stops
Mhm.
there, which is more direct.
Yeah.
Not that I'm trying to get rid of you.
No,
So
no.
I'm about to tell you now.
No,
Wrong. Last second.
No, I know. I'm the one who asked the time it is doing. So yeah, I guess today, I mean, that was really interesting and very useful for contacting people and trying to find.
Oh, another one.
More people.
Before we continue, another friend who suddenly came into my mind, and I've lost him again.
Yeah.
Dr. Henry Byrne,
Mm-hmm.
who was an Irish doctor.
Yes.
Okay, I'm
He's-
sure you've got a lot of
Yeah.
and Dr. Henry Byrne was a very close friend of my father's. He had his children's portraits done by my dad, and he was always very good at offering advice, as you do with if little John wasn't very well. Henry would sort us out. He was very good in that respect. But he was a real talker as well, Henry, and the two of them would really go at it. And it wouldn't be a lecture with Henry; it would be a two-way dialogue, and they would go off in tangents. And Henry could be quite a volatile character, actually. So it was always interesting to listen to him. And he eventually emigrated, so you will have blue emails from Henry, and eventually died quite a few years ago now. But they were good friends. They were close friends, and friends who, like Ted Harrison, it wouldn't be more than it would be more than Christmas cards. It would be every few months. There'd be how you doing? This is what we're doing. So they were good friends as well. Burns.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no. I was wondering about that relationship. Do you know how they met, those two?
I don't.
You don't know?
No, I don't. It would just be speculation.
Yeah.
So there's no point.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, I guess what I would like to do is show you some of the images I showed you last time, but try to just talk a little more about. Yeah, I'm interested in just kind of recording any stories or just an oral history about the works, and just talking a little more about story and what your perspective on these works. And
you can,
yeah,
and I'll give it a go, but
yeah.
that's my perspectives are very shallow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. When I say perspectives, I don't mean opinions of the works. I just mean, I'm just interested in these stories that they might bring back for you of your father painting or of home or things like this.
No, I don't. If I was to think through and say, can I remember going up to my dad's studio, and there's one particular painting he was doing and a story that came from that. I really don't think that was the case. I don't think there was ever a case of a story became associated from a particular piece of work. Maybe not the actual painting of it and the actual being in the studio. Sometimes stories that have come about through just third parties and or stories that have been passed down. Things like the Trimden Crossing picture, which is where the bus used to stop on his way to visit his girlfriend who became his wife, and the two men at the bar who with the dog, and the story about how they went to war. Some of the stories that are associated with the pictures, certain pictures, are quite vivid. But in terms of a story of how he felt about this, or how he would, his technique developed, or how he felt about a certain thing. I don't really think he shared those with us. Maybe to an extent he knew that I wasn't driven artistically. I was politely interested. In fact, I'm ashamedly saying this, because now, as an older, wiser person, and realising how much of my father's work is valued by people, I would now tell my younger self to sit and listen to him and talk and ask questions, and why are you doing that, and what do you feel about that, and maybe as Michael did, because when he retired he had the chance to do this. I would have spent more time doing that. Michael was going to do what you're doing and stick a tape recorder on. He did a little bit, but that would have been very valuable to have done that. So I don't have pictures about the studio and this. Occasionally, he would talk about composition. He'd talk about how, the sweep across here, sweep across there. This, typically the things he would often say about the dog's legs and the pumps and how they would balance. Occasionally, he would talk about the golden ratio. Even though I have a good abstract brain, I didn't understand it as well as my father in terms of how things fit together with the golden ratio. The picture that Lindsay has, that's the housekeeper friend that they had for many years, which used to sit in the living room. He used to talk at length about that particular picture. I think he was particularly proud of that one, and he used to stand there and show you the curve and this curve and that S shape that comes through here and falls all the way down there. Those odd occasions you would get that sort of enlightenment from his perspective, from his thought process. The majority of the time I was up in the studio, it would be a polite, "Oh, that's nice, Dad, I like that." And he might say, "What do you think about the sky? Think it's too dark?" And I would think, "Well, why are you asking me? I don't know. I haven't got a clue." So there'd be a bit of polite. And I think he would realise at that point that was probably a worthless venture. So he showed me pictures, but the thing is, it might stimulate things to do with my perspective of that street or my memories of something, but not the actual process of producing the picture.
That's exactly what I'm hoping for. Not
Okay.
Necessarily, because I know last time we spoke, and you did tell me quite a bit about the process and about him, what we spoke about last time. But no, this time I'm more interested in your perspective on the street, your perspective on who might be in just anything.
Okay. Well, something might come of it, something may not.
Yeah. Shall we enjoy our cakes and then
Yes. Yeah, otherwise the speech is going to be very muffled.
So what I've done with the data that you wanted about, I'm sure you can do an Excel data sheet and how you can do a sort on a column, and the column will do things alphabetically or numerically, which is fine. So it'll throw up all the I's for ink, but then there's F for floor masters, which is part of the same thing, or felt tip, which would be the same thing. So there's that, but then it also could be Flowmaster and watercolour, or it could be watercolour and Flowmaster. So it suddenly becomes a one at a time trawl to get the information. You can't. I haven't got the skills.
Yeah.
Maybe it technically isn't possible, but I haven't got the skills to group together those things in such a way that I'll get every reference to ink out of it.
And how many items are there on this document?
Okay. I'd say about 5,000.
You weren't expecting that.
First Canadian in history to choke on a piece of cake.
Yeah, no, okay, I see.
But within that, we have a bunch of work from 15 up to 2,900 of loose sketches I went through at Northumbria University, photographed, measured, named, sometimes erroneously, and then medium on card or whatever, which is fine. But then we have, when we cleaned the studio, we took out all of the work from plan chests and all sorts of different places and rolled up and then put in flip charts, and we found them all over the place, behind wardrobes. Then we took all of that, and Mike and I, well, all of us, photographed that, which is fine. So we have an image, we have a number which is associated with the image, but we haven't gone through and written a number on the back of the picture, which obviously Andrew at Northumbria did. So if it was image number 2325, that would be the image number, but it would also be penciled on the back.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, what we did, maybe you should have thought at the time, but we had a couple of thousand to get through again.
Yeah.
So we haven't got the number in the back, and more importantly, we haven't got the medium written down, because that would have been a lot of time and effort.
Yeah. Okay.
However, the vast majority of the stuff that isn't recorded is Flowmaster pen and paper.
Okay.
So I've got it, and I'll give you a memory stick, and if you want to go through and take, burn a bit of midnight oil.
Yeah. No, I'll definitely take a look at what you have.
Yeah.
And how much of it is works of art that have been sold, that are owned?
I would say the majority of the stuff is from the Northumbria bomb. It's all from Northumbria University days onwards.
Okay.
So it's only a period of time.
Which is what, the 80s?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's 70,
Or
78 onwards.
78
I'm not sure. I should know.
something like this. Okay.
So work that went to Northumbria came as a 10 pictures or 20 pictures for an exhibition, framed, given an NC number. So we have up to about 800 of those.
Okay.
Fully sorted, labelled, measured, etc. The vast majority of those have been sold over many, many years. Anything before that, I mean, I don't think Mara took a lot of work that wasn't ever going to be in an exhibition. So the database we have of 0 up to 3,000 was basically the first time a lot of loose work came her way and was all archived. So before that was just a picture, like say that one, NC number, information's there. Anything before that is in the catalogues, Stone Gallery catalogues. It'll say what the picture was, what it was. So you can go through the catalogues and you can pick out what was being painted and drawn at that time.
Yeah.
But I guess there wouldn't have been any occasion, because my dad didn't throw anything out, as you clearly have seen. There wouldn't have been any occasion when a lot of loose work would have just left his Bishop's Close Street or to a studio to any person or persons.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what came out of the studio to Mara, and then what came out of the studio at the end when we took it out, was basically stuff that had been there and kept and kept and kept, and so effectively it is the majority of the work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anything that was sold pre-Northumbria University that's out there is stuff that's probably been in a catalogue somewhere,
That's in there.
as opposed to loads of loose work that's not been recorded.
Right.
So it's fairly
Okay.
thorough.
Okay. Good. Good to know. Good to know. Okay. So I'll start with the
Okay.
image you gave me.
All right. Are you recording at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay. So, as I said to you before, I don't recall being in a studio when Dad was painting these pictures, and so Bishop's Close Street, even though it was a theme we went back to regularly, I don't recall how he put this particular picture together and how he felt about it, but obviously he returned to it regularly, because I suppose it meant so much to him, in terms of the fact that his parents, he wasn't born there, but his parents were living there. He lived there with his young family himself a few doors down. It was the start of the pit road, and it was sort of the centre of, it was basically the centre of Spennymoor, where everything was very stereotypical of a street in Spennymoor. So I sort of remember myself, not so much how the picture was painted, but I just remember the time when everybody in that street knew everybody else, which is a very unusual thing nowadays, because most people don't tend to know many neighbours. Everybody knew everybody's business. Nobody's door was locked. Children used to be left in prams outside, myself being one of them. So nowadays, with all the safeguarding, it's just like, who'd have thought? I mean, they would just stick me outside the front door, close the door, and do what they were doing, and I'll be getting fresh air. And the factory girls or whoever would walk past and hoochie coochie coo and walk past, and so that was a very trusting, proud environment. The children were happy, they all played out. You can see in the picture itself, the things like hula hoop and skipping and all of those things that were very simple but joyous things to do. Parents were happy to let the kids do that. For me personally, I have a very personal memory of the outside of the house in Bishop's Close Street. Not so much the inside, because I did spend a lot of time outside. Because it was an adventure playground. We had obviously when the photo got this picture was painted, we had steam trains going along the back of the street, but I can't recall that. I must have been very, very young when that happened. But my memories was of a railway embankment which was unused, so children would play on it. To this side was the gasworks, and just over the railway embankment was a lake. I say a lake, it was a pond. The duck pond we used to call it, with sticklebacks and newts and creatures like that. And then to the left was the most moon-like environment you can imagine, with slag heaps. Sounds exactly how it was. Heaps of slag in mounds and hollows and derelict and exciting, and buildings maybe quarter of a mile away, which were the old iron foundry. In 1890, Spennymoor had the biggest rolling mills in Europe, and that closed in, I think, 1910, 1920, so it was still derelict, and the buildings were still there. The slag from the foundries were still there. So all of these areas, and I can go on in this direction, all of these areas are places where I had a fantastic childhood. So it's very evocative saying that. And my father spent his childhood in a very similar environment in Oxford Street and Bishop's Close Street. It's just like excuse me.
I think it says in one of his books that to their creative minds it was an adventure playground, and it's exactly how you've described. So clearly Norman had the same early experiences as John has spoken about for him. So a place with great meaning and
So as a youngster, we were in 33. Obviously we had Bishop's Close Street was 60 houses. 3 blocks of 10 down one side of the street, 3 blocks of 10 down the other. The corner of the block that we were in, 33, was 3 from the end. That was the corner that was nearest the start of the pit road. But you're walking down the block of 10 from 33 to, I think it was 38, and my grandparents lived there. That's on my father's that side. And there was a time when in that house there would have been my granddad, grandmother, and 1 girl, Ella, and 6 boys in a 2-bedroom house. By the time I was a child, and we moved into the house 33, there were just my granddad, grandma, and my Uncle Bobby. And I used to pop down there for a bowl of chips or to comb my granddad's hair. He used to give me I don't know, throw me a bit of something for combing his hair. And I remember, like my granddad very much, used to sit between his legs watching the TV, and his belly would be moving up and down, and my head would be moving with it. And I used to get up and comb his, put some Brill cream in his hair and comb his hair. And I had a very close relationship with my grandfather. He was a footballer, actually. He was a minor, but he's a very skilled footballer. He was offered a chance to go up to Scotland to play professionally, but didn't want to leave his family behind. So yeah, so there was a closeness, a community beyond the family. It's a few doors down, but was Norman's parents and my grandparents.
So this was Norman's parents who you were describing.
Okay.
Sarah.
So Sarah she was a very, people used to call her serene Sarah, and that was probably the best word you could think of to describe Mum. She was very, very caring, placid, worked hard, gentle. She was a very, very good mother. She kept the house meticulously clean. Had a very caring nature. She cooked really, really well. So we always had a good diet, and we were well looked after. And she used to knit and crochet and all of that. So excuse me. So she was often in that position, whenever she wasn't working in the house, she was knitting things for the children, or cardigans, pullovers. She would be crocheting blankets, doilies, that sort of thing, traditional skills. But my sort of memories were she worked exceptionally hard, not perhaps as hard as Norman's mum and dad, because obviously Norman's mother used to have to look after 7 children, and some of them were on night shift, some of them on 4 shift. There's food at different times of day, washing different times of day. So it was hardly surprising she was always worn out, or looked worn out. I think in comparison, my mum was okay. She worked hard, but she had enough to do, and she coped easily with it. So my dad often saw that that was one of the household moments he would draw the most. And I used to focus very much on the hands. The hands would be very intricate hands. There would be knitting, there would be peeling potatoes, whatever, and he would perceive that as almost with a head bowed over, with the hands together, almost as if it was a sort of a praying attitude, it's almost a religious moment. And he'd often say that. It clearly wasn't, but to him it was. Mum's hair used to be up like that all the time, and he wasn't domineering. I don't think he was forceful with his opinions, and probably to keep the peace, Sarah would comply, but the hair was always up, and he loved the hair like that. And you see, the majority of
I think he found it sort of the shapes, because she would sort of pin it up and here and there. And I think obviously the shapes, and he was fascinated by the poses Sarah made when she was doing all these things.
Yeah. And if the hair ever came down, he would never like that. He'd complain about that. Excuse me a bit.
But she was very supportive.
Sore throat.
Supportive of Norman. So all that John said is correct, but hugely supportive. And actually, he probably believed this, and lots of other people do, that without her support behind him, pushing him forward, that he may not have made that leap of faith, which was mentioned on the Antiques Roadshow, from being working down the mine to becoming a full-time professional artist. And it's documented somewhere that he was deliberating following a Stone Gallery conversation or communication, when they said, "It's now or never, Norman, you really need to become professional here." And he obviously realised that it was a huge leap of faith, and a very difficult one to make, particularly with 2 children to support and a wife and so on, that he was deliberating a little bit, and she'd said, "Well, if you don't go and hand your notice in, I will," which was really quite strong and forceful of a woman who was actually very gentle, very sort of timid almost, but she obviously had great strength when needed, and in that instance showed her great sort of loyalty and support for him, which helped him make that overcome that hurdle, which was a huge one at the time. And we don't really think about it now as a family so much, but just occasionally when you're reading some of the books, you realise that he must have gone through great angst at times over certain pictures, certain commissions. For example, the mural that he was painting and the conditions he painted that in, that he had very, very many stressful times. And obviously a great stress would be making that leap from being a miner to full-time professional artist, and I think she was quite key, quite significant in making that happen.
I think one of the important things with Sarah, obviously they met when they were young and they fell in love and all of that, but my dad slowly became a little bit more quirky, I guess. He didn't like cars, understood the need for them, but didn't like cars, didn't like change, didn't like anything out of his normal range. So in that respect, he was very quirky. To meet him, you wouldn't know, but to live with him, you would know he was quite a quirky sort of character. And I think what Mum did, she sort of normalised him. Alright, so I think he may not have coped as well in certain settings with certain people doing certain things if she wasn't there to just keep him on the straight and narrow. And I can't really give you an example of how she's done that, but she sort of put up my dad's quirkiness and brought him down to a level where he functioned effectively in a family and as a professional artist. So she was really instrumental in that respect. Had it been a different person who had been less tolerant, less patient, who knows what would have happened. But he met the right person.
And did your mother? Did she ever work herself?
When war broke out, everybody had to. So my dad had to stay as a reserved occupation. He couldn't go to war. I don't know whether he would have wanted to, but he couldn't because that was the law at the time. And Sarah, this is before we met each other. Sarah was working as a nurse in Winterton Hospital. So she did that work, and there was a time, excuse me, there was a time when he first left the mines, and there was a bit of tension as to where the next money was going to come from, and that she went to the factory, Smart and Brown's factory, and did a few weeks of work, and eventually Norman said, no, this is not going to happen, because they must have fallen out about her coming in at certain times and she'd be tired or whatever. So he effectively put his foot down, and so she had a brief period, but she worked very hard in the house. Eventually, with Terrace, it was a big house with lots of high ceilings and lots of rooms and a big garden, and she had to work hard to keep that.
Because not only did she do the cooking, the washing, the cleaning, but she also did the decorating to allow him space and time to do his art.
Yeah.
So she did, quite a lot in the home.
Yeah. So that was Sarah, and as a 80, 90-year-old person, she they sort of rubbed along together towards the end, when they're very old people and they sort of got on each other's nerves, but they still loved each other and tried to look after each other, and it was quite difficult towards the end. And she became quite reserved in that she wouldn't want to leave the care home, or she was worried that she wouldn't watch the news, so it was always bad, and so she was quite morose, really. She didn't live.
She almost withdrew from life, didn't she?
She was fine, but she didn't really grasp life towards the end as much as she could have done. Anyway,
she always felt she had a good life, though,
she
didn't
did.
she?
She had a life.
I've had a good life, and we've achieved a lot together. But she realised that her life was over, and but she looked back with no regrets, I think. Well, even though he'd been difficult to live with at times, certainly he had, hadn't he?
Yeah, he was.
But we often say ourselves that somebody who had the intellectual ability he had and the skills and talents, it almost put him on another plane, which made it difficult then to have all of those social skills that sort of a normal person would have.
It comes to the territory. The vast majority of highly creative people, as I'm sure you're aware, can have quirkiness, personality disorders. I wouldn't have said my dad had a personality disorder, but it comes at a cost. You end up the creative process was all consuming, so you'd never switch off. Whatever he saw, he wanted to draw. He didn't want to think about it. So it's going to have an effect upon you. As you're not going to sit and watch the football or relax or anything like that, because
or follow leisure pursuits.
Yeah.
Although it wasn't a time of leisure pursuits in those days, particularly.
Yeah. One thing he did particularly like, and you're probably aware of this, he had a very, very significant record collection, and he loved classical music, Sibelius. Well, no, not just Sibelius, but he had all of the classics. I've still got them in the garage, actually. I can't bear to part of them. And he had a fantastic hi-fi system. It was a state-of-the-art hi-fi system with tip-top, top-of-the-range speakers, quadraphonic speakers, a hi-fi deck, a record deck, which had rather than an arm which went around like that, it was a tangential, went along and dropped and sent it. I'd have two arms, photoelectric cell, it would drop at the right spot, and absolutely amazing. And the sound that came out was fantastic. So we'd often spend a lot of time. There was a phase of maybe 10 years, 15 years, where the entertainment, the TV wouldn't go on. He'd go in, sometimes with Sarah. Sarah would like it as well, but mainly with Dad. the lights would go off, and the sound would go up, and he'd play whatever. So he was very moved by music. So that was the only, well, other than drinking, which was partly work, but he obviously enjoyed the crowds. Other than drinking beer, the music was his crosswords. He used to make a crossword. That was his.
Music was one of his passions.
Okay, moving on.
Interesting. Even then, you know, like, yeah, it sounds like, you know, between having an art career and having a mining career, I mean, that doesn't leave much time for leisure.
No.
For
That's the remarkable thing, isn't it?
yeah.
As a 15, 16-year-old in a house full of children, no space, working. I mean, I don't know how hard a 16, 15-year-old would be expected to work when you first joined the mines, but
Probably as hard as the other men.
no, I don't think so. I think they got broken slowly.
But it's a long day, and of course the
Yeah,
long walk there
yeah.
and back as well. Yeah, it didn't leave much time, and then if you fit artwork in as well.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So yeah, the fact is that most people would just say, "Oh, I just want to sit down, put my feet up," but he was just driven by this need to draw, itch you had to scratch. Right. Nothing springs to mind with this one, I'm afraid.
Other than being fascinated by people in general,
Yes.
great fascination for people and the shapes people make, and obviously one of the characters in the community, lots of women, you know, you've seen the typical sort of gossip standing together with children at their skirts. Another one would be, you know, the lady sort of pushing the pram in the rain. Perhaps he really liked the sort of wet streets and the glisten they made. That would be my kind of view of that, just observations of people and life going on around him.
The people he drew were real people, and there were a little bit of, there was caricatures there. There wasn't an exact photograph of snapshot of a person pushing a pram or two people gossiping. The clothes they would wear would be a little bit exaggerated for effect, almost like a Giles. I mean, I don't know whether you know or remember Giles, the cartoonist. He used to have a daily cartoon in one of the big daily papers, and he used to sell a lot of books, Giles books, and almost like cartoon-like characters. So he never quite got to that level, but I think he used to use like a caricature and just draw things out a little bit, just show how people felt. People were never stiff, people were always leaning against the wind or towards each other or in a hurry or ambling, and his skill of portraying that through his paintings, through drawing characters was very profound. He could capture someone, he could capture a person's face, so it was instantly recognisable, which is a skill in itself, but he could capture a person's physical body in such a way that you could just tell how they felt, whether they were happy, whether they were sad, whether they were in a hurry, all of those things. So yeah, that particular picture is just a very typical picture which encapsulates that really. Okay.
I have a question for you. What's your earliest memory?
Well, my memory is absolutely shocking. This there's various things that I remember. I remember in terms of my dad. I remember going down the park, and I must have been 3 or 4 year old. There was like a band, like a tennis club, changing pavilion, which was like an indoor space. I remember booting the ball backwards and forwards with my dad, which wouldn't have been something that he would have enjoyed, but he obviously did it because he was the father of a little boy, and so he did that. I remember those sort of moments. I have a vague recollection of it's almost maybe a memory I've almost made up. But I can remember sort of being in a pram and my mum leaning over with a sort of a silvery, nice small silvery grey jacket on, smiling. But I don't, that I remember that. My best memories are just playing around Bishop's Close Street, the sort of the games we played and the things that we did and where the hills were. I think that's about it really. I really can't remember an awful lot. I remember the tin bath, and I remember the outside netty, and I remember those
Outside
feet. Yeah, the outside toilet. Yeah.
Okay.
Netties, the
Yeah, netties, yes.
northeast.
It's a colloquial phrase. Yeah. I remember the street. I remember I got a bicycle for Christmas, and it was the first Christmas that for years where there was heavy snow, so I couldn't get out on my bicycle. They're all just snippets, really. I mean, I can't think there's anything significant where something. Well, I do remember one thing, and I don't know why it happened, and it was quite unusual because my dad was never a violent person. He never used to hit us or belt us or anything like that. On one occasion, three of us were walking along the high street, down from the town hall towards Bishop's Close Street. I can't remember. I must have seen some shop doorway, so I stepped in and looking at it. The next minute, they were gone, and I must have been wandering around thinking, where's my mum and dad gone? Must have been 5 minutes ago gone by, and Dad came running down the street and clipped me on the ear roll. You mean? I do remember that, which I felt very unjustly treated. Don't know why that happened, but I do remember that. Just little snippets like that.
Yeah.
But nothing significant in an art in terms of art history, I'm afraid.
Did he never show you how to draw or sit you down and?
He must have done. I do remember the drawing that we did do, and there's a couple of photographs, and I think I might have even been on one of the black and white films. We used to have an old wallpaper samples booklet. So I don't know if you've seen these, but if you go to a wallpaper shop, you get these rather large files, which are clip files with hard covers, and then you've got lots of different wallpaper types, and you can flick through to choose one. So we used to have redundant ones of those, and I used to flip it over and draw a train on the back. And I used to sort of draw a train disappearing into the distance, and I used to, as a child, have interest, probably fostered by my dad, who no doubt tried to develop an interest in his children. So yeah, I actually was quite skilled, but never necessarily particularly enthusiastic. But I could certainly put pen to paper, and I would draw my granddad, grandma, and I would draw quite a reasonable caricature as a sort of 10, 11-year-old. I could draw quite well. So I do remember those times sat in the house and.
Did he guide you though? Did you?
I can't recall that. No, but he must have done. I really can't remember. I wish I could. I just have a very poor memory about so many things.
I guess I have a couple of questions following from last time. We talked a bit about going to did he ever speak about artists that interested him?
He didn't need to speak about them, though I'm sure he did. It was evident by the fact he had a very, very large bookshelf in the main living room, and it was packed with.
Do you remember any artists that he spoke about?
No,
he
he had in the house. He had in his bedroom a lovely Degas ballerinas. In fact, I've still got it. It's just in the hanging up in the utility room. If you want to take a little look. So in his bedroom there's a poster of 4 or 5 ballet dancers getting dressed, which we took out of the bedroom. We took. He had Rembrandt, the self-portrait by. Well, Rembrandt did several self-portraits, but one particular one that he liked, so that was in the living room, tucked in a corner. But he, the ones I would say he spoke about the most would be the likes of Rembrandt, not Van Gogh so much, no, Rembrandt, Lautrec, Bruegel. Who else? No, I think it would be those 3.
Okay.
It would be those 3. And Bruegel, I think Bruegel's work's very similar in many respects to my dad's. I don't know whether his influenced my dad. I don't know, because obviously as a 15-year-old, when he went to the settlement, there was obviously a range of art materials there, the artist magazines and books, and that would have been his first experience. He wouldn't have been able to go to an art gallery or visit, jump in a car and go to see these things. So they must have been an inspirational resource, and he must have been influenced by that, as well as the characters like Bill Farrell and the likes. But Bruegel could well be one that had influenced him, because the characters in many Bruegel pictures cast across the picture are very much like we get in some of my dad's works, and you look into a Bruegel picture and you just get a snapshot of how life was for the common person in those days, in that period of time, as you do with my father. So I think you like Bruegel, Rembrandt, particularly because of his portraiture, I think, as much as anything. And I think he liked Lautrec, in that he had a poster, you may have seen it, a collage of all the Lautrec posters that was now with the is it with the archive, or is it in Spennymoor Town Hall? I don't know. That was in the studio. I used to like that, and Manet.
Monet.
No, not Monet so much. Manet. Yeah, I think he had a broad. I don't think he was particularly selective. I think he knew what he liked, but he liked a good range of artists, and that's why we have everything from Lowry through to Picasso was in the collection. So it's really hard to say who influenced the most. I don't think he was into modern art at all. I don't think he really appreciated that. I think it's the masters.
Not abstract art.
The masters. Not going back centuries, but.
It's interesting as well, the mural of the Miners' Gala, which he painted in '63. He featured himself in the painting on the left-hand side, looking in on the scene with John on his shoulders. And it sort of got mentioned, I don't know if Gina mentioned this, that one or two artists prior, and it might have been one that had been influenced by, paint themselves into the picture.
Yeah.
And it was also interesting when we were listening to that as well. I hadn't quite realised that Norman was a younger man then and a young child, and they're looking in on the scene, and over this side is sort of the old guy, on the far right hand side who's looking back to the scene. It's almost like they're looking at the past. I thought it was quite interesting.
Yeah.
He may well have had that influence to put himself in that.
Yeah, and just reading the other day in the quintessential poem, I think I got you that. I hadn't realised that he was given apparently the first commission idea was for 4 paintings. One was sort of going to be what was it now? One was going to be a trade union meeting or something of that nature. 2 others, and the big meeting was the 4th. For some reason, I think the architect for the new county hall must have changed his view. Maybe the actual shape of the building was about to change, so instead they commissioned one large piece, and we hadn't realised that that was offered as a commission to paint something representing County Durham. As we always assumed that he was told that the Miners' Gala is the theme and get on with it. I don't think that was the case.
No, it seemed to come from his own ideas in that sense.
Yeah, and what struck us when we were at County Hall the other week was the fact that across the painting you have characters who are basically just people in a crowd, and they're not distinct as such, but clearly down the left hand side is the artist himself, little boy in shoulders, which is me, and down this side there's an old guy with a tash who is not just a person in the crowd, so he is a known character from the crowd. And also a lady and a younger boy on the right hand side. Right in the middle there's a child across the back, like piggyback of a man, and they seem to have actual features of a character. And one of the books explains how he painted in some of his family and friends. So it'd be interesting to find out who they were. Which at the moment we don't really know. And I don't recognise anybody. I was 7-year-old, so I wouldn't. But I think it might have been an uncle or something of that nature. Or his grandfather, who knows. But that information may be lost in the annals of time, we don't know yet.
Yeah, maybe somewhere in the archive there might be
And also
sketches or something.
Norman had in the past designed a couple of the banners for a couple of the collieries, which I didn't know about, and perhaps John did. I didn't realise that he'd actually done some of the designs for the collieries, and we don't know whether some of those were actually in that mural, his own designs, or whether they were just generic ones that...
There's only one that actually you can distinguish, that as the one with Strength is Unity, which is a trade union. I know it's a miners' union, but it's a trade union doctrine. Have you seen the banner book?
No, I haven't seen the banner book, no.
So I got off the subject there, talking about the mural.
No, that's alright. That's the nature of it. It's good. You learn different things different ways.
Cornish and 16. And there's my father's. Well, I think you did at least 2. That's one of
That's one of them. I'm wondering if it's mentioned in Leanne Bunn's PhD.
Could
might
well
be in
be,
there.
yes.
I feel like I've seen it in there.
Mm.
So that was in his bedroom. So you think of it like that.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Just dig ours, isn't it?
It's a big I haven't seen that one before. That big.
Yeah.
It's very nice. Yeah, because I've seen in Spennymoor in the studio. There's quite a few posters. I'm just trying to remember which ones are in there. That's a really nice book.
Mm.
I'll see if it's at the library. The bad book. What type of crafts would your mother do? What kind of traditional crafts are there?
To do what, sorry?
Your mother, you spoke about at one point. You said your mother just did crafts and things like that at home. What
So she would have done. So we have sewing.
Mm-hmm.
We have. She had a Singer sewing machine, which is a treadle. You've probably seen them. It's treadle and yeah. So she made a lot of children's clothes.
Yeah.
She used to buy patterns. I remember you used to buy a pattern book with a lot of tissue paper, all the different things, and cut and stitch. She did crocheting, and so you've probably seen blankets which have squares with colours, got concentric colours. She did quite a few of those. She knitted a lot. So she knitted a lot of pullovers and cardigans and such like. She mended and darned a lot.
She flower arranging.
Did a little bit of flower arranging, but she was in
that was just more of a skill
group.
area.
Yeah, she was in a young wives group, which is full of old ladies, but they sort of did those sort of things, flower arranging. But basically traditional. She was not unusual in that the vast majority of ladies back in those times had to make things. They couldn't afford to buy clothes, and so blankets and clothes and all of those things were produced.
Baked pies.
She did. Very skilled.
Yeah.
I was reading about, maybe this is older, I was reading about traditional kind of rug making where they would...
Well,
probably
she
not.
never did that.
Yeah.
Not that I remember. Proggy mats are, you have a material, and small shards of different coloured
Felt.
material, very long, very, very thin ribbons of material, which used to get pushed in and twisted a certain way, so they were sort of knitted in. So it was like a shaggy mat, for a better description. So flat on the bottom, with how would you describe it?
Just lots of material sticking
Yeah.
up, so it was very textured on the top.
So effectively, you would just make these things from old clothes, whatever's lying around the house, an old pair of curtains or whatever. She used to make curtains as well, of course, net curtains and all of the things like that. Anything that had to be made in the house was made by Sarah.
And she used to wallpaper as well.
Yeah.
She's-
My dad was capable of these things, but his skills were limited to.
Yeah, although Norman made quite a few things but made of wood, so he had practical skills in that
He did.
sense. He made a table, a coffee table is the one I'm thinking of,
Yeah,
that we still have now in the garage, and he was really sort of proud of it.
yeah, and
It
made
made me
a little
probably
stool, a little
stools.
four-legged stool. But the majority of his work was based around frames, framing, mortise and tenon joints to put frames together, miter joints, mitering machines to put the frame together. All of the things that you would require to actually put together a decent frame and a decent mount. He used to cut glass, of course. He used to go down to Defties down the road. He used to get his hardboards for his work. He used to get glass there as well. So he'd cut his own glass, just the right size. Brown paper, obviously. All of the strings, D-clips, all of those materials. So his downstairs studio was more or less a workroom for a little bit of painting, but largely a collection of all sorts of materials and mounting boards and frames and such like.
The other thing I wanted to ask was about religion. What role did religion play in weekly life when you were a child?
I think my mother's father was a lay preacher again. He was a kiddie catcher, effectively a school truant officer. He used to go around and pick up children who used to be missing school and tell their parents off and get the children back to school. But he was religious, as Sarah's mum and dad were both religious, Methodists. So as a child, I would go to Sunday school. I think my dad would. As it was, typical family life, but he was never one who would go to church to worship. I'm sure he was christened, but I don't think he ever had any strong religious views. His view, he didn't believe in God per se. I think he believed in an overarching thing in control, and he felt it was basically nature. He felt, if anything was governing our outcomes and and the way things are in life, it's nature. And he philosophised about that quite a lot. But he would never, I don't think he'd ever bring conventional religion into a conversation other than perhaps the crucifix pictures, which are there's only a very small collection of 3 or 4. A couple of them are very rudimentary sketches and a bit of a oil and newspaper, a couple of Flowmaster sketches. Just because at that moment he felt that his workmates were almost being crucified by the volume and intensity of the work, and walking to work, and he saw the telegraph poles and put two together, and that was a moment in time, a thought that just came and went, I think. So I don't think he reflected on religion in terms of Christianity. I think he largely speaking, respected people's views, but he would argue his views if necessary, and they weren't deeply religious.
Interesting. Yeah, I've been curious about that. Okay, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Apart from my voice,
no, don't
I had a cold about a week ago, which is gone. Which left me with this bit of a tickly throat.
No. But you're feeling better though.
I feel fine.
It's just the
tickly throat. It's just not really. So just start talking and just go. So we're busy on Wednesday showing the Spennymoor town councillors and county councillors around the trail.
Excellent. Yeah, I heard that it had got the go-ahead. I heard that from Rick.
It's so we're anticipating that the archway that takes you from the high street through the town centre to the car park at the park, which is sort of an archway, is getting a bit shabby now. So they're going to put some time and effort into refreshing that and modernising it. And they may one of the ideas is to put a large facsimile of the Miners' Gala mural in there across the side walls. Perfect shape.
Perfect.
And that might well be the start of the trail. So I think politically the people in Spennymoor see what's happening in Durham, and the developments there. See people in Bishop Auckland, which is equidistant in the opposite direction, getting all of the Auckland Castle Trust things going, Kinnan and the Manning Art Gallery. I think they feel that they could be left behind unless they modernise and start to think proactively. So they see my father's work as a perfect vehicle for bringing in some interest into the town.
Yeah. No, I think it's
So,
a great idea.
yeah.
I think it's really, really good.
Yeah. You want to have a look at the data?
Yeah, yeah. If, that would be great.
Do you